I finally got some miles put on my A7s III, and I feel like it's time to talk about some settings on this camera. These settings I'm going to talk about are new specifically on the A7s III, but some of them have existed on other Sony cameras as well. The reason I'm going to talk about them is because they are settings I didn't really realize existed, and they are super handy depending on what kind of shooter you are. So this video is for those who are not only new to Sony Alpha cameras, but have also used the Sony Alpha cameras for a while now. If you've been watching videos about the A7s III, you probably already know about a lot of these settings as well, so maybe you'll learn something new, maybe you won't. But if you don't know who I am, my name's Dustin, your video tour guide, and please keep your arms and legs inside your chairs at all times. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Just a reminder, I do live streams on the YouTube channel, but to keep things from getting oversaturated, I also do live streams on Twitch. I spend time in just chatting, but even if you catch me while I'm not just chatting, I'm more than happy to answer more questions, or if you just want to chat more. You can also join the Discord channel if you want to get more involved with the community. There are links to everything in the description. All right, so the first setting is a game changer in my opinion. Let me explain. You ever thought you were recording, but then looked down and noticed you weren't? You know how when you start recording, you just get a little red circle in the corner to confirm that you're recording? Well, that's old news. If you want to not only know for sure that you're recording, but also look more professional in the process, the setting I'm talking about is the emphasize rec indicator. All this does is put a red square around your monitor when you press record. You think I'm kidding that I put this as my #1 setting, but I promise you will want it on. Especially if you're a run and gun shooter, knowing that you are recording in those moments that you can't do retakes is a game changer. To turn this setting on, go to the red menu, go to number 10, and turn on emphasize display during rec. The next setting is kind of an interesting one. So on my A7 III, I actually put the APS-C mode onto a custom button. I shoot on prime lenses a lot, and sometimes I just need a little extra zoom on a specific shot. So I just punch in with the APS-C. On the A7s III though, if you are recording in 4K, APS-C is disabled. The reason for this is because the sensor is only 12 megapixels, which is the minimum amount of megapixels you need in order to record 4K. So if you change to APS-C or Super 35, you just couldn't get 4K. But there is a way around this, and that is clear image zoom. What this does is it gives you the ability to digitally zoom to 1.5 times, which is the same as an APS-C crop typically, and it'll upscale that image to 4K. I don't know which is better, filming in 4K and just punching in post, or doing this clear image zoom and having the camera do the upscale for you. But either way, even if you do punch in post, it's a good way to give you a good idea on what that kind of crop would look like if you're going to do it in post. To do this, go to the red menu, go to number 9, then change zoom range to clear image zoom. Then go to zoom and go ahead and zoom into 1.5 times. You can also set this to a custom setting if you would like. This next setting has to do with autofocus. On older Sony Alpha models, when you wanted to customize your autofocus settings, it typically would give you only 2 options. For example, with speed, there was either standard or responsive. On the A7s III though, they've made some big changes, not only to the speed, but to the shift sensitivity. You can now change the speed of AF when you are racking from one object to another, or if you're tracking something and want the AF to have a different look. There's now basically 7 steps of speed ranging from slow to fast. You can also do this with the AF shift sensitivity. There's 5 steps to choose from, ranging from locked on and responsive. I can't really give recommendations on what you should choose for both because it's entirely dependent on what you are shooting and what you are trying to accomplish with the AF. To access these settings though, go to the purple menu, go to number 1, and then choose AF transition speed and AF subject shift sensitivity. The next focus setting is super cool. On past Sony Alpha cameras, the eye AF tracking only worked in photo mode, but now it works in video mode as well. Sometimes when I was shooting a video as well, the autofocus would focus on the opposite side of the face that I wanted it to. Now with the eye AF in video mode, you can even change the eyes you want your autofocus to focus on. I have this mapped to a custom button, so it's easy to switch on the fly, but if you want to access this setting, go to the purple menu, number 3, then select right or left eye. The last focus setting is the touch tracking. I believe this comes in as the default setting for video mode, I can't remember, but sometimes I want to use the touch to focus setting instead to quickly grab focus on something and then cancel it to start tracking someone or something. To change this setting, go to the yellow menu, number 5, then touch function in shooting from touch tracking to touch focus. I'm kind of sad that I couldn't put this into my function menu. I don't really know why I couldn't, but I did put it into my menu so I can easily get to it on the fly when I need to change to this. The next setting I want to talk about has to do with something that has plagued Sony Alpha cameras, specifically when you're shooting in 4K. What I'm talking about is overheating. I totally understand there are ways around the overheating, like for example, not shooting in 4K or using an external monitor, but I'm a very minimal shooter, and if a camera can shoot 4K, I expect it to shoot reliably in 4K. This was even happening when you weren't shooting outside in the heat. But now this has pretty much been fixed. Not only does this camera have some kind of passive cooling, but there's also a setting you can change so it'll overheat at a higher temperature. This can be useful if you're shooting outdoors in the hot sun for a long time, or if you're just shooting higher resolutions at higher frame rates for a long time. There's still a chance that it could overheat, but it'll significantly decrease the chance of it happening. To change this setting, go to the yellow setting, number 8, then choose auto power off temp and change to high or standard. The next setting is another thing that has plagued Sony Alpha cameras specifically as well when you're shooting in video mode. For those who shoot video probably know that usually when you shoot video, your files are named something weird and unique to avoid possibly overwriting any of your previous files, and that doesn't change when you format the card. On Sony Alpha cameras though, each time you formatted a new card, it would start over at 0001. This was a super annoying setting, especially when you reconnect media files in your NLE or Premiere Pro is what I use, for example, because it makes it that much harder to know which files are the correct files to reconnect to. Well, this is no more on the Sony A7s III. You can now change the file naming system to essentially whatever you want. To access this, go to the red menu, choose number 3, then choose File Settings. Customize it to whatever you like. Our next setting is actually a setting that is not done internally on the A7s III, but it's a setting that is unique to some of the other Sony cameras out there. The in-body stabilization on Sony Alpha cameras in the past has not been the greatest. I wouldn't call it terrible, but when you compare it to some other cameras IBIS out there, it's definitely something they could improve on. The A7s III is no different, and it has 2 different options. The standard option, which uses the camera's 5-axis stabilization, and then the active option, which is a digital stabilization that crops into the sensor 1.1 times and also does this in camera. The cool thing about the A7s III is that it also saves the gyroscope information into the metadata of your footage. If you want to take advantage of this in post, you have to go through Sony's free software called Catalyst Browse in order to use this. So it's not as convenient as getting it stabilized in camera, but it is a game changer in my opinion. I still need to do further testing to see which I prefer or which I like, but if you want to see some comparisons, I'm sure there are some YouTube videos out there that you can watch. The next setting has been all the rave, and it's even a setting that doesn't seem to be advertised or marketed by Sony, and that is the dual ISO. What dual ISO means is there are 2 native ISOs on this camera. And typically the reason you want to stay close to a camera's native ISO is to help control noise, especially when you start to crank your ISO in a lower lighting scenario. The base ISO on this camera changes depending on which picture profile you are in. The easiest way to remember this is the base ISO will always be whatever the lowest ISO setting is. If you're in the standard picture profile, which is just picture profile off, the base ISO is 80. Hey, post-production Dustin here. I just realized as I'm editing this, I didn't clarify that the base ISO in S-Log2 and S-Log3 are 640, but you can go below that. There's a setting called Extend ISO, and you can go below the native ISO when you're in S-Log2 and S-Log3. So just clarifying that, the base ISO is 640 in S-Log2 and S-Log3. That's all I got. Let's get back to the video. To figure out what the second ISO is, you just go 4.33 stops above the base ISO in any of the picture profiles. So for example, the base ISO with no picture profile is 80, and when you go 4.33 stops over, so 1, 2, 3, 4.3, And boom, 1600 is the second native ISO. For S-Log3, we start at 640 and we go 1, 2, 3, 4.3, and we're at 12,800 ISO. Like I said, Sony hasn't said anything official about this camera having dual ISO, but since enough people, including myself, see that the noise cleans up at 4.33 stops above the native ISO, it has to have dual ISO. For these next settings, they are nothing new, but they are settings I wish I would have known about from the get-go if I was brand new to Sony or considering buying a Sony Alpha camera for video. The first setting is marker display. What marker display does is it'll display lines on your screen, which gives you an idea where the image will crop if you want to change your aspect ratio in post, so you're not having to reframe things after you crop. You can even change to different aspect ratios depending on what you want. To access marker display, go to the red menu, number 11, then choose marker display and go to aspect marker to change what aspect ratio you like it to display when you turn that on. The next setting is gamma display assist. Gamma display was something on previous models. I don't believe had this set to auto by default, so it may not be as big of a deal now because I'm pretty sure it's set to auto on this camera. But you should still know about it if you'd like to shoot your videos in S-Log or even HLG. All it does is basically apply a Rec 709 or Rec 2020 LUT to your display to give you a better idea of what the color looks like once it's graded and makes it easier to judge focus. You can pretty much just leave this setting on Assist Auto, so it automatically applies this to your display when you change to the picture profiles that it applies to. Just know it doesn't bake that color into your footage, it only displays it on your monitor. To access this setting, go to the yellow menu, display option, and gamma display assist on and gamma display assist type auto. You can select the different options if you need as well, or turn it off completely if you would like. The last and simple setting is mostly for when you need to shoot incognito. You'll notice when you press the record button, you'll hear a little audio cue to confirm you have started recording. It'll also do the same thing, but a slightly different audio cue when you stop recording. It's kind of like a leitmotif, if you know what I mean. If not, Google it. Sometimes though, you don't want your camera making these sounds depending on what you're shooting. I guess it makes sense why this setting is called audio signals, but on my A7 III, it seriously took me forever to figure out what this setting was called because audio signals made me think it had something to do with the audio going into my camera or out of my camera, not the actual audio cues it does when stopping and starting recording. To find audio signals, go to the yellow menu, number 9, and choose audio signals. And that's the 12 must-know settings on the Sony A7s III. I'm going to give you a little bonus secret on this camera as well that's new, at least I think so. If you are ever confused on what a setting is and are too lazy to look it up on the internet or in the manual, if you click the trash can on any setting, it'll tell you what the setting does. If you think I missed something or have some must-know settings you want people to know about, feel free to put a message in the comments or come pop into my Twitch chat or join the Discord channel to get more involved with the growing community. If you found this video helpful as well, be sure to give it a triple thumbs up. And if you support what I do, be sure to check out the links in the description, or you can also support the channel by hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified of future uploads. Until the next video though, happy filming.